It is Thursdays Off the Ball. Nathan with you until 10 o'clock this evening. We've got a busy show ahead. John Giles will be in studio. We'll hear from him on the football show. We'll be talking about Jack Grealish, who's been in the media quite a bit this week. Looking ahead to the Republic of Ireland's 2 internationals as well, getting John's thoughts on that. After 8 o'clock, we'll hear from Munster's Shane Daly. He is one of the capped players who is on the emerging Ireland squad who are heading to South Africa on Sunday. I will talk to him about that and also the change of coaching ticket at Munster and what it means for him. We'll check in on the very latest at the Women's Irish Open at Dromona Castle, where Leona Maguire has started very nicely. And we'll also head to Scotland. Gavin Cooney is over there ahead of the game on Saturday night. As always, 53106 is the text number. Add Off the Ball on social if you want to get in touch. Richie McCormack is with us. Good evening, Richie.
Nathan, how are you?
I'm all right. Joe Molloy, how are you?
Very well, gents. Hello.
So, Paul Pogba's gone. He has left our lives forever and moved away from Graham Souness's radar. So, Graham has zoned in on a new target, and that target is Jack Grealish. It is the beef we didn't know we were going to get, but it is the beef we're very much starting to get on a daily basis. So, Jack Grealish was in front of the media yesterday and was obviously asked about the fairly constant criticism that seems to come from Graham Souness, and he had a bit of a bite back. Says he's on Sky, he's on TalkSport. I can't really get away from it. Everybody tells me he clearly has some sort of an issue. So Graham Souness was on TalkSport on one of his many media outlets today and had another go. I can't do a Scottish accent, so Richie, I think the way this can only work is if I say what Graham Souness said and you do Graham Souness straight afterwards. I'm really putting you on the spot here.
There we go.
22 players at it.
Okay. So he said, I don't have a problem with him. I don't have a problem with anyone.
I don't have a problem with him. I don't have a problem with anyone.
I'm sure if I met Jack, I'd really like Jack.
I'm sure if I met Jack, I'd really like Jack.
I think he's a cheeky chappy.
I think he's a cheeky chappy.
I'd like to have a night out with him as well.
I'd like to have a night out with him as well.
I'm on TalkSport with you guys, which I'm loving.
I'm on TalkSport with you guys, which I'm loving.
I have a column with the Daily Mail in which I get a chance to express my opinion.
I've got a column with the Daily Mail, where I get to express my opinion.
I don't know if this is a very good Graham Souness, actually. It's definitely a Scottish accent. It's better than my Scottish accent. I'm just not, it's not quite Jim White levels, Richie, but we get there. We go with the last couple of lines.
Can't do. Jim is up here.
I've had over 50 years in the game. I think I'm entitled to an opinion.
I've had over 50 years in the game. I think I'm entitled to an opinion.
I just feel, don't be so precious.
I just feel, don't be so precious.
And now Jack Grealish is going to have to come back at him again. That was very good, Richie. Make it prove. The listeners come get in touch. 53106. I think your Jim White is definitely on another level.
I've listened to too much Jim White. That's the problem.
Good.
Graham Souness did point out that when I was having a go at Paul Pogba, it was because it was Manchester United. And I think it was the first one to call Pogba out as being an average player in our league. I think I was proved 100% right at the end of the day. So he was a trendsetter. He got on the Pogba bandwagon early. He started the Pogba bandwagon. He's been proven right. Is he been harsh on Jack Grealish, Joe?
No, don't think so. See, I think it's just he gets asked about him so often, and especially on that TalkSport show, they have a couple of go-to talking points, and definitely one of the talking points over the last 2 years has been Grealish. Initially, like his behaviour or maybe misbehaviour in lockdown really put him on their radar, I thought, and he was a good talking point, and then big figure for England in a sense that he could be doing more. And now with the move to City over the last year, there's a constant, and we would do it ourselves, to be fair. We would talk about Grealish because he's a very interesting case study, because you feel like if he, blossomed under Pep, he could be really, really special. And I think the points, because I was listening to the initial chat, I listened to that show a good bit because I like Souness and find Simon Jordan kind of entertaining in his own unique way. And what Souness was saying was something he had said about Grealish a long time ago. And it was that, does he see the picture quickly enough? He has, the most foul player and takes the most touches because he's not moving the ball on quickly enough for my liking. And, he catches the eye because he's such a lovely dribbler. But actually, is he hurting teams the way he could be? And I don't think they're unfair criticisms. And this came hot on the heels of the really bad performance in Dortmund. And yeah, he scored the goal against Wolves and had a few kind of nice mazy-ish dribbles. But I think Jack Grealish should be the first to admit that it's not going all that well. And I thought, to be fair, when Grealish was asked about Souness's criticisms, he wasn't that precious. He wasn't that upset. He even made a point of saying, "Oh, like Graham Souness was a great player, and I guess he's everywhere, and he gets asked about me." And Grealish was certainly not saying, Graham Souness needs to lay off, and they're kind of both trapped now because what the other has said about the other is relayed via a third party. So it's like Souness has a real cut at you, and then it's like, geez, Grealish has really hit back at you, Graham. He said you're a bully. It's that kind of fulfilling media dynamic at the moment. But I wouldn't disagree with much that Souness has said about Grealish. It's that uncomfortable thing where it's like, then put to Grealish and on we go.
The other thing that stood out yesterday when Grealish, all the media appearances that he had made, or I presume it was just actually one press conference and it was turned in a million different ways as these things are, was when he described himself, Richie, as a normal kid, and everyone sort of went, actually, Jack Grealish is 27. Jack Grealish is 27. You still have in your head that Jack Grealish is 23 and is this developing talent, and give him another couple of years at City and then he'll really flourish and maybe be one of the best players in the world. Another couple of years he's 29. It's all over, Jack.
Yeah, all over is probably a bit of a stretch, obviously, but there has to come a point within the next 18 months where there is a massive uptick in his product. And I mean that in the sense of what he produces for City in terms of assists, in terms of perhaps goals as well. But I just think what he is now at City is commensurate with the player that he was at Villa, which is somebody who does take a lot out of the ball, who will draw fouls from defenders and earn an advantageous position for his side. Now, that works really well when you're in a middling to lower half of the table team like Aston Villa. When you take a step up to City, you do kind of need to produce a little bit more. You do need to have to find a couple of little extra wrinkles to your game, because if you don't, then you do find yourself under pressure from the likes of Bernardo Silva, Ilkay Gundogan and Riyad Mahrez for your place, whereas he was the man at Villa, and I think that suited him to a T, to be the central focal point of a team like that.
Is the criticism not slightly different at City, that he almost doesn't take enough out of the ball,
worse.
that he's the ball comes to him, there's a defender to take on, and John Giles was in earlier and we spoke about this, and he really feels that, and maybe the contradiction to what Foden says about playing to a more structured system and what Pep Guardiola says about him is, when Phil Foden generally gets the ball, Phil Foden goes at the defender. Like, his first thought is to either go at the defender or get it into the area quickly. Whereas it just feels when Grealish gets it, like he just looks a shadow of the talent that was at Villa. He wants to take almost the easy, conservative option, we assume, so as not to annoy Guardiola by losing the ball.
Yeah, I'll be listening to John Giles about that, because I think Grealish has gone massively backward in that respect. I think he's now become the worst thing a footballer in Grealish's mould can be, which is a self-conscious footballer and an overthinking footballer. And it was interesting yesterday, because he's quite open, so it makes it very interesting to get a sense of what's going on. Because he said yesterday that Pep encourages him to take touches on the ball, to dribble, and that there's no pressure to take a touch and move it on. And yet we know Grealish has spoken in the last couple of months that he's very conscious of not wanting to lose the ball. And so for a player with Grealish's attributes, he is caught, I think, in no man's land. And I think we saw that in particular against Real Madrid, where he should have taken on his man more, and he didn't. And he just gave the ball back and, stayed outside of the Madrid defence and recycled possession and therefore offered nothing. Whereas at least for Aston Villa, it was like, it was higher risk, but it was like, I don't care if I lose it that much because I'm their best bet. So there were a few Hail Marys in there, and maybe he overdid it at times, but geez, it didn't have come off plenty. And now, call it taking the easy option, the safe option, the I won't get in trouble option. And so what is he? You know what I mean? Because he's not a metronomic passer, and he's not going to dictate the play with his passing. But if he's not taking people on and having these risky moments, then he's nowhere. And I think there's certain players where you see where their confidence goes. I feel like when I watch Grealish, I can feel him thinking. I feel like when Jack Grealish gets the ball now, I can feel the wavelengths of thought. The first thought, take him on. Oh no, don't do that anymore. Go inside. Oh, but I could take him on. And it's nothing. And you mentioned Foden's a good example. Foden gets the ball, sees something, and plays with clarity. And I think Grealish has lost that clarity. I think he's lost his confidence, actually.
And Foden makes such an impact in the biggest games. I know Guardiola was somewhat critical of Foden a couple of weeks ago that he hadn't started the season very well. But straight after the international break, City play United. They play Liverpool 2 weeks later. You have to assume Foden is on that team ahead of Grealish, because constantly in the biggest games, he is the one who makes a difference, who makes that cutting pass, who skips around the defender at the right time. And it's hard to think in the year or so that Grealish has been there that of any big game where he has been the one you look at and go, whew, was really the game changer in that one. The other thing I wanted to ask you, your thoughts on Grealish, is that, like, the cheeky chappy line that Souness came up with, and obviously he ends up in photograph out having a good time, and you never hear too much sort of around the game or from pundits or anyone who'd be on about Grealish, like, you know, going over the top. But like Souness said, I'd like to have a night out with him. At the end of the season, when Roy Keane's talking to him, it's stay away from the top shelf, type of guy I'd like to have a night out with. Like, maybe that is a bit of a reputation that can start to stick with you, and if you're not performing, it turns the other way very quickly. Of, you know, it's not at Gaza levels, but like, if that's sort of the impression that the main pundits have of your professionalism at the moment, it's not really an ideal scenario for Grealish to be in.
No, true. And your point about him being 27, I sort of think of him as 24. You know, 23, 24, cheeky chappy, that's okay. Yeah, 27. We don't know what he's doing, I guess, so that's where we're kind of limited. But there's so many nods to it and allusions to it from various people that you've got to think there's a little bit in it, you know. And it's kind of striking, he's even talking about how he's not quite fit at the moment. I know there's a bit of an injury, but like, you're kind of thinking, as Richie said, I forget 18 months. I mean, if at the end of this summer we're still seeing the same Grealish, would you bet your life on Pep not making up his mind on him?
Would you take him back at Villa?
Move on then if he's not.
Yeah, the Villa fan says they would absolutely take him back. We are in the news round. It's brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. So to start us off, Richie, the Women's Irish Open, we'll check in with Aisling O'Reilly in a while. For the success of the tournament, you want Leona Maguire to be there in contention all week long, and she started perfectly.
Well, not exactly started perfectly. She bogeyed 2 of her first 4 holes today, but she did card a 5 under par opening round of 67 eventually at the Women's Irish Open at Lancaster. The Cavan golfer is 2 shots off the joint clubhouse leaders of Lena Bogqvist of Sweden and the Isle of Man's Alexandra Payne. Next best of the Irish is County Clare amateur Aidan Walsh, former guest of the show, just a week or so ago, who opened with a 1 under par round of 71 today.
For such a brilliantly successful golfing country, Joe, it's a bit of a stain on that there hasn't been a Women's Irish Open for the last decade, considering what had been built at Killeen Castle around the Solheim Cup, that was just allowed to disappear into the ether. Leona Maguire, it was a late announcement, but she's there, she's playing, and you just hope now that actually she can stay there and they get big crowds and it creates a bit of a buzz and this becomes just a regular event on the calendar.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they had great crowds in 2012 in Killeen Castle. You wouldn't have thought in 2012, God, this thing is dying due to lack of interest. And we know the trouble even the Men's Irish Open suffered as well over the last kind of decade plus. So it's difficult, and it all comes down to, it's definitely all down to money as opposed to lack of interest, because Portmarnock Links in 2009, there were great crowds. And yeah, look, KPMG are on board now, and you would think that's going to give it a sense of momentum over the next couple of years. The prize money is still incredibly low by comparison with the LPGA tour. But look, the Ladies European Tour is struggling. You know, we talk about that a bit on Golf Weekly, and it's a constant struggle, and COVID was a massive blow to it. So this sort of feels like the wheel's just starting to turn again, but like quite slowly. And if you didn't have Leona Maguire in that field, it wouldn't really catch the eye at all. And, you know, she's KPMG links and sponsors, so she was always going to be there, and it's her home tournament. Yeah, you hope. Golf financing is a curious beast, and you know, geez, there's mumbles that Liv are going to look at taking on the female game next. So you just don't know. From one year to the next at the moment, it's so volatile. But yeah, like, it's crazy, given the crowds they'll get. It's crazy that there wouldn't be an Irish Women's Open for sure.
There's a big game in the League of Ireland tonight, Richie. A month or so ago, Shamrock Rovers had games in hand, and there were opportunities for them to move, 10, 11 points clear, and it felt like it was pretty much done, and they could sort of rest players in the league and focus solely on Europe. And bit by bit, they've struggled to keep both moving alongside each other. It's been a disappointing week, losing in the Cup, easily beaten in the Conference League, and now they go to Shells tonight, 1 point clear of Derry, 2 games in hand. But any more slip-ups and you got yourself a proper title race.
Yeah, it'll be 4 points, the gap between themselves and the Candy Stripes tonight if Rovers win away to Shelburne. But as you say, it will just be a solitary point with just 1 game in hand after tonight's game. A 7:45 start there is at Talca Park tonight. Elsewhere, Wales are in Nations League action away to Belgium this evening. Their Group 4 leaders Netherlands are away to Poland in Group A1. And injury-hit France play host to Austria, and Croatia play Denmark.
So this has been talked about quite a bit over the last few days. Started with some speculation, but Preen confirmed now. Stuart, Lancaster and Racing, it looks like it's going to happen.
Yeah, the Racing head coach Laurent Travers confirming today that the club has held talks with Lancaster. The Leinster senior coach will reportedly hold a video call with Travers and Racing owner Jackie Lorenzetti about a role at the club for next season. However, speaking ahead of tomorrow's URC date with Benetton, Leinster head coach Leo Cullen was pouring as much cold water as he could find on talk of Lancaster's departure.
Well, we talk all the time, yeah, like, you know, always during this season. So, like, you know, you think you're coming to this start of the season, but like everyone's always making plans for the future, and that's players and staff, backroom team as well. So, you know, it's like the silly season is there always, you know, up until a point where, you know, things get finalised. So we're going to be in this period of speculation, shall we say. And we can't comment on other people's speculation. And that's, you know, we're trying to talk about one person specifically who's been amazing since he's come into the group. Yeah, but like again, like that's, we're just commenting on speculation. So it's, you know, how long have we got here? Yeah, we just deal with all these cases individually. You know, just the nature of it, like generally people are signing not much longer than 2 years, so we're always, it's almost like every year there's 50% of your coaching and playing roster are off contract, so you just got to go through with that.
I thought initially, Joe, this might be the usual contract negotiation ploy that we have seen through the years where, you know, Sean O'Brien is about to sign for a French club, he's giving serious consideration, and then, you know, a contract is signed 20 minutes later with the IRFU for the next 2 years. And maybe Stuart, Lancaster, this was a bargaining tool. It does feel like there's quite a bit of substance to this now.
Yeah, it sure does. I first heard about this a couple of months ago, mumblings of an approach. And then when nothing came of it, I thought, well, he seems so happy in Dublin that he's just turned it down. Even though prospect of being head coach in Paris with that Racing team, there's a lot of attractions to it. And then it started appearing in the press, and Jerry Thornley had the piece last night saying it's all but happening, and you know that the conversation's happening over the weekend. So yeah, I think that's it. And like, it is still it's a reasonably long stint, so it's maybe not entirely surprising that he feels, well, I've done all I can do here and it's time for a new challenge. It's obviously an enormous loss to Leinster because they've had to replace quite a few personnel behind the scenes, and replacing Lancaster will not be easy. I mean, he's been talked about as almost the best, pretty much the best coach in Europe at what he does. So you're trying to replace best in class here, and I don't know where they go to do that.
Well, what are you hearing, Joe? These murmurings that you heard a couple of months ago that you never bothered to tell us about at the time, are there murmurings you're hearing today about who the likely replacement is?
No. If we were to go on air with every rumour or murmur that we heard, you know, so
bit of a damn good show.
It's not yet be a damn good show. We should do it once a week. And not the only like people in for Lancaster, which is, you know, as you would expect. So I think based on Leo Cullen's answer there, it's fairly obvious that wheels are in motion, and he's going to really enjoy press conferences for the next couple of weeks. You can just tell. What else can he say? Because I can't comment on speculation, and you know, if we talked about everyone, well, we're not talking about everyone, and it's a bit more than speculation now. So that's just where we are. It's tricky for them. But I was just saying to Andy Dunn last night on Wednesday Night Rugby, you lose McDawson, and now next season you have Lancaster and Sexton out the door. It's a very new Leinster.
It sure is. 53106 for the text number. That was like a poor Northern Irish accent, says Phil. That's very harsh, Richie.
Harsh.
That's harsh.
Don't send them ones through. Richie tried his best there at very short notice. No time to prepare. You get the impression Souness is just loving stirring the pot these days. But he's very relevant. He's very relevant right now. Like, you know, we love having
relevant by being
Souness on this
irrelevant.
show. But like, he's on Sky, he's on TalkSport, he's in the Daily Mail. He's definitely got a new lease of life since he went to the Mail. Bit more freedom.
Yeah, that happens to people, isn't it?
The TalkSport thing puts him a lot in the limelight as well, because he gets hit with like 30 different topics, and they're seeded out across social media across Mondays.
God, outrageous. What are they doing? What are they doing?
Terrible business model.
Nathan and Joe together, and you managed to wrap up the golf chat in, wow, well under an hour. Well, that's because we already did an hour and 40 minutes possibly for Golf Weekly earlier today.
Yeah.
That's available. Everybody right now. So yeah, we kept it tight tonight. You know, we know that everyone doesn't want to talk golf all the time. It's perfectly fine. So Andy Dunn was brilliant last night on Wednesday Night Rugby.
So good.
He was obviously talking about Kieran Frawley and the Merging Ireland Tour, and they're heading away on Sunday. We're going to hear from Shane Daly, who's on that as well. Kieran Frawley has matters closer to home though before that, Richie.
Yeah, and he's going to have a chance to start it out half for Leinster in that aforementioned meeting with Benetton tomorrow night. Returning to the team as well are the likes of Gary Ringrose, Robbie Henshaw, Andrew Porter, Josh van der Fleur and Caelan Doris.
We've been hearing a lot on OTB AM from Shane Hannon about this very protracted search for a new Monaghan manager. One of several counties really struggling to get somebody, it felt like, to commit to being their new senior football manager. But finally, Monaghan are getting there.
It would seem so, yeah. Their protracted search for a new football manager looks to be over at last, as they are set to appoint Vinnie Corey as Seamus McEnany's successor. It was the end of June when McEnany stepped down after 3 seasons in charge. Corey won 2 Ulster titles as a player with Monaghan and retired in 2019. He's set to be assisted by his brother, who was part of Mickey Graham's setup with Cavan in recent years.
So the World Rowing Championships happening at the moment. We'll have plenty of coverage over the weekend. No, Niall O'Toole is going to be on Saturday and Sunday, but a very good day for the Irish crews.
Yeah, Niall's going to have plenty to talk about, I think, over the weekend. Saturday especially, it was a near perfect day for Irish crews at those World Championships in the Czech Republic. 4 progressing to A finals today. Fintan McCarthy and Paul O'Donovan won their semi-final in the lightweight men's double sculls. They'll race for gold on Saturday. The women's 4 of Emily Hegarty, Fiona Murta, Emer Lamb and Afric Kyo advanced by placing second in their semi-final as well. The lightweight women's double sculls, Margaret Cremen and Aoife Casey also finished second in their semi-final. And Katie O'Brien and Stephen McGowan were second in their repechage to clinch a spot in the para mixed double sculls.
I've mixed emotions about this next story, Richie. So Euro 2028 is going to remain at 24 teams?
Yeah, UEFA are going to scrap plans to extend Euro 2028 to 32 teams. Ireland are part of a joint bid with the UK, of course, to host the tournament, and they're competing with Turkey for that right. With more than half of Europe able to qualify for a 32-team competition, there were fears that broadcasters would show little interest in the qualifying matches.
Yeah.
Where's that going to end? Where do you think will end up World Cup number of teams?
Well, we're heading for what, 48?
Well,
you can't really
48.
go greater than 48, can you?
Well, 20 years ago, I told you
is a nice round number.
20 years ago, if I told you we were at 48, you would have said there'll be no chance. So,
32
60?
teams did increase the chance that if it's in Ireland that we would actually be there. So even for that reason alone, and they're probably like qualification has been dumbed down to such an extent. You know, we're looking at the draws on in a couple of weeks for Euro 2024, and the top 2 qualify automatically. Then there's playoffs for teams that finish third. There ends up in a lot of games that don't really matter. In fact, the Nations League has become a far better competition than qualification now for the major tournaments. Even looking at those fixtures tonight, watching that Scotland-Ukraine game last night was really good. Has good quality to it, 2 teams, similar ability. They all seem to matter with the sort of ladder system, that there's actually something at stake for every game, even for Ireland, Scotland. Even though Ireland can't finish top of the group in all likelihood, it still matters in terms of seedings and things like that. That maybe there's actually an expanded Nations League. I know it wouldn't work for the Minnows and Ireland.
yeah, it's definitely beaten the friendlies. I mean, that's for sure. It's been very good. I think it still does have a degree of the can you explain to me better than Kevin Kilban how it all works problem, but we're getting there.
Listen, nobody has done a more damaging job to the Nations League than that one night Kilban decided to step in. Manchester United financial news, Richie.
Oh, yeah. Good news. Yeah, Manchester United have announced a net loss of £115.5 million for last season, despite revenues rising by 18%. The club's debt rose by 22% to £514.9 million. The Glazer family also shared in a dividend of £33.6 million, despite those sizable losses. The incoming transfers of Cristiano Ronaldo, Jadon Sancho and Rafa Varane saw their wage bill rise to more than £384 million, the highest in Premier League history.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane, the wages, as we've seen from many graphics over the last few weeks, the top paid players in the Premier League, and so many of them at Manchester United. We got to leave it there, lads. Richie, thank you as always.
Thank you, lads.
Joe, enjoy the weekend.
Cheers,
was that
lads.
Souness? Your Souness is like Souness losing his voice bit by bit. Give us one last Jim White. Give us one Jim. You're much more comfortable with Jim White.
I'm much more comfortable. Nathan, it's been an absolute pleasure to be with you here on News Talk.
I'm heading to Scotland first thing in the morning. I feel like I'm already there. All right, time for the cash.